Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here is your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning and welcome to Faith in Our Hometown, our regular show where we discuss issues of faith and what's going on in our community. This morning, our guest is going to be Debbie Fitzgerald, who's the Director of Crisis Center Services at the Ozark Center. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about during this half hour this morning is that during this holiday time, usually we always have to worry about people who get down or get the blues or even have what we would consider clinical depression. And also here in our area, I've been discussing and talking with Debbie about the fact that we've also got a real problem with suicide here in our hometown, which basically means we need to talk a little bit about what we might be able to do to help some of our friends who are struggling during this time, and maybe be better partners with those folks who might be thinking or contemplating something like suicide. So we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Don't go away.
From childhood, whenever I was about 12, I would say, my weight really started climbing and it never really plateaued. I've tried low-carb diets, high-protein diets. I've tried calorie diets. It's very important to Dr. Lou that this is a team effort, so a primary care doctor following up with me regularly, and the dietitian was very helpful on providing recipes and helpful information to help me be successful in my journey. I am very active and I play sports with the kids. We like to go play volleyball. I've done some warrior dashes.
So thanks again for joining us this morning. As I mentioned before the break, our guest this morning is Debbie Fitzgerald, who's the Director of Crisis Services at the Ozark Center. So Debbie, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and about the Ozark Center first?
Well, as you mentioned, I am the Director of the Crisis Services, which means we have two teams. We have the Crisis Center that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All services are completely free of charge, and that is here in Joplin. And also we have a second team of counselors that are embedded within the Freeman West Hospital Emergency Room. And so once again, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the charges through Crisis Services are completely free of charge. I have been with Ozark Center 29 years, and I am very happy to be with the crisis team. I feel like that's where I can do my best work and be able to help people that need me the most. Yeah. And I've been with the Crisis Services since 1998. So wow. a good long time. Yeah. And I have a great group.
You, like me, started working in infancy?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
of
yeah,
course,
I was
yes,
5.
That's perfect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So you do a lot in conjunction both with Freeman and as an independent center. Or I mean, at least in terms of that function.
We serve the community.
Right,
yes,
just the
we serve
community.
the 4 county area of Barton, Jasper, Newton, and McDonald County. But certainly we have people that live in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas that work in Joplin and choose to come to services here.
Right.
We take crisis hotline calls 24 hours a day, and we also have our new electronic messaging program. Anyone can email or text a counselor 24 hours a day. We also see people face to face, and we actually sometimes go to people's homes and to the scene of a crisis.
Yeah, and I don't think that a lot of our viewers know of some of the work that's done, which is one of the reasons why we like to have organizations like yourself on the show, so that people can see all the different good works that are being done by so many good people here in our area and our region.
Absolutely.
And Ozark Center is one of those. As I said, before the break in our introduction, today one of the things we want to talk a little bit about is depression, especially when that depression gets so bad for some people that they even contemplate ending their own lives. You were telling me about the high suicide rate that we have here in our area.
Yes, unfortunately, I've been active in suicide prevention for probably 20 years, but became very active the past decade when we previously had some suicide prevention grant funding that allowed us to train thousands of individuals in Southwest Missouri in suicide prevention. And I get discouraged because our suicide rate from the year 2012 to 2014 more than doubled. It was like 2.5 times increase. So in Jasper County alone, we lost 17 individuals to suicide in 2012, but in 2014, that number jumped to 43. And that's just one county.
That's a huge number for an area like ours.
It is, and they keep records through the state, the Bureau of Vital Statistics, and Jasper County has ranked in the top 10 counties for death by suicide since 2001, so that's 15 years. And I feel like my job's not done and that I need to do more and get the word out and tell people a suicide crisis is survivable. You mentioned it very eloquently earlier when you said people's depths of despair grow so deep that they see the escape is the suicide. It's not truly, I truly believe they do not want to die. They need to escape the pain of living, and they either need to feel better immediately or they need to end the pain and suffering. Okay. And so what research shows us is for every one person who dies by suicide, at least up to 18 other individuals are intimately impacted to the point of life disruption. So if we lost that many people, think how many family members, friends, work colleagues are left questioning why and what could I maybe have done, or did I miss something?
Yeah.
So we have a hurting community.
Yeah, and it's up to people like us, but even all of our viewers, to try to figure out what we can do to help our brothers and sisters who might be struggling. Now, as we say, we're right here between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We're right here in this holiday time, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this particular show, because haven't done ministry for a while. I know that some families and some members of families struggle a great deal with the holidays. Because it just becomes, for everybody else, they're trying to, feel happy and do all those things. And we got people among us who are suffering and in pain during this time as well.
Yes, and typically during the winter months, we have seasonal affective disorder when it's not as bright outside and it's overcast and cloudy, and people can develop some seasonal depression. Also, what's common at a lot of different holiday functions, drinking. Alcohol's accepted, and alcohol is a risk factor if you're very despondent and down and suffering and pain. Yeah. And it really clouds judgment, and also a lot of stress of the financial pressures of the holidays, thinking people need to host family, and that does bring stress, and then keeping up with everyone else as far as gifts.
Sure, spending money, yeah.
And that is pushed a lot through our media as well.
Sure, exactly.
And so people feel just a lot of different pressures. Sometimes weather's bad and people can't work, so sometimes it's even a decrease in income, especially those in certain careers such as construction when the weather's bad. Yeah. And so when you combine a decrease in income, suicide does not have just one cause. It's usually a lot of things. I like to call it a perfect storm. It's a personal perfect storm. Just like it took those perfect conditions to cause the tornado in Joplin, it's that same set of circumstances for that individual that are swirling around, and they just kind of keep piling on until they feel there's no hope. They really just lose that hope. And if we can recognize that somebody's struggling and connect them and support them, they can survive a suicide crisis. They usually last about 3 weeks from start to finish, and so they're not over very quickly, and hopefully the person can survive on the other side of that.
So say a little bit more about that. That might be confusing in terms of that. I mean, somebody in the health profession will talk about a suicide crisis, but some of our regular viewers will be going, wait, how would somebody survive suicide? Well, you're not talking about just the suicide or the actual act of attempting to end one's life. You're talking about all of that leads up to
Yes.
that moment that sometimes pushes a person to do that. So say a little bit more about that.
Well, usually most people are fairly stable, and everybody has a bad day or has stressful times that bring them down, that may cause some sleep disruption or some eating problems or maybe some bouts of despair and tearfulness. But when those thoughts start turning to escaping, usually someone starts having difficulties and it builds and builds, kind of like if you will imagine a snowstorm, and then it gets really heavy. And very often it's a matter of one day or several hours when the risk is imminent. And we know that there are some common things that people display right before they attempt suicide. Because for people who have had a suicide attempt and it costs them their life, they go back and look at those to try to learn what can we learn from their death, so that if we recognize that again.
Okay. So let's do it this way. Let's do it in a couple steps then. First of all, when does a person's moods or that kind of moody, or kind of feeling down, when should we start to get worried about some of our relatives or friends or neighbors?
Our colleagues, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or some of our congregation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Usually if it lasts for a period of at least 2 weeks and it's causing a major life disruption. And what I mean by that is they have dramatic mood changes. They may be irritable, they may be angry, or they may be so despondent that they're not doing what I consider their normal daily routines. They usually get up and do, if it's a female, their hair and makeup and dress and go to work. And now they're staying in bed and calling in sick or not going to work at all, maybe not helping children with schoolwork. If it's a man, same thing. He may not be sleeping well, or they may reach to actually abuse some substances, whether they're prescription, over the counter, or alcohol. People usually do not suddenly become suicidal.
Right.
That is a myth. It usually builds over time. And what we know is that everybody has times where they feel very downtrodden and they have despair, but if they have support and can be connected with someone who's trained to help guide them through this suicide crisis, they can survive it. That's the key.
Yeah. So our job as people who care,
Yes.
all right, is to help people get over that period where it's just seeming to be so dark or so bleak.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do.
And if you can help people see light at the end of that tunnel, very often they will take your hand. They don't see another way. And if you can show them another way to get relief and feel better, and they may have had 90 problems when they came to the crisis center, but if we can take off 10 or 15 of them and help make it better, it may be enough hope to keep them going.
Yeah. So my guest this morning is Debbie Fitzgerald, who's the Director of Crisis Services at Ozark Center. We've been talking a little bit about how we might recognize some of those signs. And when we come back from the break, we're going to actually talk a little bit about what we can do to help connect people and to help them maybe get over this crisis moment or this crisis period. We are going to be coming right back after a short break. This is Faith in Our Hometown, so stay with us and don't go away. You too can be part of the solution rather than part of a growing problem here in our greater Joplin area.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Thanks for sticking with us this morning. I know our topic this morning is a little difficult, and somebody would say, why are you doing that in the holiday time between Thanksgiving and Christmas? Well, the part of the reason is because this is the time when we need to be looking at some of our brothers and sisters in the area who might be struggling. So we talked a little bit before the break about how we get them over that little, that hump in terms of, helping them to start to manage some of the things that seem so unmanageable at that point in time. So, what do we look for? What do we do? And if we got somebody in that crisis, let's put those numbers up first. So we got a few numbers first of all.
Sure. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And in terms of those numbers, we've got some numbers for local area
Yes.
and local help.
Yes.
And also we'd have some numbers for the hotline.
Yes,
Okay.
the national hotline.
Okay. And so those would be one thing. We can give numbers to call, but what would we do for our brothers and sisters who are struggling?
Well, if you know someone fairly well, you don't have to know them like you would your best friend or your family. But if you know someone and you're noticing changes, they've suddenly stopped doing what they previously had done and done fairly well, or if they're in choir and they suddenly pick a fight and quit coming, and their appearance is amiss and they just seem very down. Most of us, you don't have to be a licensed professional counselor like myself to recognize some despair and when somebody's struggling and having some emotional difficulties. Right. And I think to say to them, are you okay? And then be willing to listen to what they have to share and say, I'm sorry that you're having such a difficult time, but I know some places that we could get some help. Would you be willing to phone and talk to a counselor? You can do it anonymously. Would you prefer that I go with you to the crisis center?
Sure.
Is there someone else that you would prefer to see? The crisis center makes referrals throughout Southwest Missouri. So if you do come to the crisis center at Ozark Center and you say that you want a particular type of counseling or therapy, we can help make those arrangements.
Good.
But just really support them and check in on them, make sure they're doing okay, possibly offer to help. But if they say, I think my family would be better off without me, who cares if I'm dead anyway? I just want out. What is the purpose of all this? Those are real warning signs that I would say, whoa, wait just a minute. I'm worried about you and I care about you. And I have heard that when people make statements like that, it means they could be wishing they were dead. I'm wondering if you're feeling that way too. Always ask someone if they're suicidal in a positive fashion. Don't say, you're not contemplating suicide, are you? You wouldn't do anything crazy or stupid, because they don't think that what they're contemplating is that
crazy.
way, because
Right,
they're
right.
not thinking clearly.
Right.
And you know, we lose at least 117 Americans a day in the United States. There's a suicide attempt every 30 seconds. There's someone dying on planet Earth every 40 seconds. And Missouri ranks 17th in the nation for death by suicide. So we're above the middle. You want to be 50. You want to be down here with like New
You'd
York.
like to not even register.
Well, that would be true. Yes.
Yes, exactly. But it would be nice to be on a little lower on that list, especially for us here in our area. Because
Yes.
well, I mean, and last year, you were given the numbers, 43 people here, even in Jasper County alone.
In 2014, that's the last
In
year we have
2014.
data
Okay,
available.
so I mean, that's almost like one a week.
I know.
When you stop and you look at the weeks, only 52 years. You got one a week.
I know.
And that's very, very high. So we engage the person and we say, well, are you feeling that way?
Yes.
Can I go with you? So here are some phone numbers.
Yeah.
Can I go with you somewhere to talk to someone?
Right.
Okay, that's always an important one. Just
Right.
because sometimes they just can't get over that hill by themselves. So sometimes
Right.
even somebody grabbing their hand and said,
Yes,
let's go
let-
talk to somebody together. We'll go together.
Absolutely.
I'll go with you.
Yes.
To have that conversation with someone.
Yes.
Sometimes, and if they won't, then what do we do? Do we involve family members? What do we do after that?
I would involve family members if you are familiar with them, or ask, who can we call? Do you have someone that knows how much pain and suffering you're having that we could bring them into this conversation so that I can be assured you're safe? Not everyone that's suicidal needs to be in the hospital.
Right.
We just need to figure out how severe that is. And I do think that it takes a trained mental health person to be able to sort that out and see what the risk level is. If people are actually making plans, giving things away, stockpiling pills, acquiring a gun, talking about the gun, maybe even possibly making final burial arrangements, those are really severe warning signs that I would rather be safe and go ahead and err on hurting their feelings and say, I know you said you'll be okay, but I'm really worried. And so I'm going to call for you. Let's do it right now, and then make that call. Certainly if someone is at home and has a weapon out and is in the act of threatening suicide, that is a time to call 911. And we don't usually think that to call the police is a good solution, but sometimes the jobs, the police, they're trained in mental health. We actually train a lot of the police here in Joplin in what we call crisis intervention team training. It's a 40-hour mental health class, and they respond very appropriately. The loved one is not arrested. They're actually taken for mental health treatment. Unfortunately, sometimes the police is to protect the community, and that means protecting us from ourselves.
Right.
And that's the last resort. We don't go to that in the beginning.
Right. And really, in terms of those things, I think that the important thing, especially for our viewers to remember, is that you don't have to be a professional at this.
No.
You just have to be somebody who cares.
Yes, that's the biggest piece, is a caring community. And I know that we're a caring community because I saw what we did after the disaster.
Sure.
And so I think that the more we can get the word out that we have people hurting, then we can support and embrace them and be there for them and help them survive these feelings of such severe despair and pain.
Right.
And I have seen many, many people who have been very despondent recover, and then weeks or months later call and say, thank you so much for talking to me.
Right.
And I see it every day. We know that treatment works. Is every person that has depression, will they become suicidal? No. Does everybody that has a substance use problem become suicidal? No. But what we know is, looking back for people who have died by suicide, is that they have some warning signs that we go over, and it doesn't take very long, and it's done very, very person-centered and very slowly to see where the person is at.
Sure. I mean, everybody's, that's when, if you're not the professional, you need to call in the professional. I mean,
Right,
if somebody's
yes.
like, if I got somebody in the, who, passes out in front of me, if I'm the only one there, then I first have to look, and make sure that, that I can do what I can do for the person.
Right.
And then I will call,
Right,
and
yeah.
I will make sure that,
Yeah.
that everything, that we bring in the real professionals, because I'm not going to be able to do as much for that person as somebody else will.
Right.
But if I'm the only one there, who else is going to care and respond for that person if I'm not the one that doesn't pick up the phone and say, wait a minute, I have a situation on my hands here and I'm not quite sure what to do with it. Can
Right.
somebody help me with this?
Right. And to call the National Crisis Line or the Ozark Crisis here in Joplin, we can actually help people make those decisions while it's going on. And I love it that you said that, because we're trained, a lot of us, in first aid or CPR, and there is a training for suicide prevention. It's called QPR, 3 Simple Steps to Save a Life. It's question the individual if they're suicidal, persuade them to seek help, and then R stands for where are you going to refer them or get them connected to the appropriate help. And it's an hour to an hour and a half class. We offer that free of charge. I've taught it numerous times at local colleges, Crowder College, Missouri Southern, Ozark Christian College. We go to businesses, we go to different churches, different faith-based groups, youth ministers. That is available to the community. We would love to have more trainings. And then once you get a caring and trained community, then you have to have professionals who
Right.
know how to treat the person in evidence-based techniques when they get there, which we do have that at Ozark Center. We now have almost 600 employees and I believe 26 buildings across 4 counties. And we have the manpower if they choose to come to us, but just because you come to the crisis center, sometimes people are worried, oh no, will they open a chart on me? Will I become a patient of Ozark Center? And the answer to that is no.
Yeah, you can just go talk and seek a little bit of counsel.
Yes.
Sometimes I think our kids get trapped in this way too, because our teenagers, or our young adults will talk to each other and it's like, well, this person told me these things that they were thinking about, hurting themselves. And I'm just like, okay, when we're into hurting, when somebody starts mentioning hurting themselves, we're in a different territory.
Yes.
It's different than holding a confidence. It's different from being somebody's friend. When
Yes.
somebody starts mentioning, then you got to learn how to be a better friend.
Yes.
And the better friend friend won't hold that confidence. And it's one
Absolutely.
thing to say, I'm upset with my parents or my boyfriend or girlfriend. That's one thing. You can hold that confidence and not talk about that. But when somebody starts mentioning harming themselves,
Right.
we're in a completely different territory.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to talk about that a little bit more so that everybody understands if you really care about the person, if they've mentioned harming themselves,
You'll take
we've
action.
got to be able to take action. We've got to say something to somebody. And we got to get them to, if they're not going to move themselves, then we may need to involve somebody else who might be able to care for them in a better and more loving way than they're capable of caring for themselves at that point in time.
I agree.
Yeah. So my guest this morning has been Debbie Fitzgerald. We've been talking during this in-between time between Thanksgiving and Christmas about how we might look for signs of folks who might be suicidal, those kinds of things. We'd like to put those numbers up on the screen if we can one more time about where you might call. 2 of the numbers are local numbers, all right? And the other one is a national crisis hotline. If you're worried about talking to somebody else, you can still call and talk to somebody anonymously nationally. We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Don't go away.
Find out how a Mercy doctor can take care of you. At Mercy, your life is our life's work. Quality, safety, and an exceptional patient experience. Mercy is grateful to be recognized as one of the top 15 health systems in the United States. At Mercy, your life is our life's work.
Well, thanks for joining us this morning for what might seem a strange or difficult topic during this holiday season or time. And that's a topic of dealing with people who are dealing with depression and even contemplating suicide. So many times as faith communities, sometimes we get in over our heads. Sometimes we want to just pray a person over it. Well, sometimes prayers are not going to necessarily, prayers are always going to help, but they're not, sometimes they need professional care because they don't quite know what to do with it for themselves, or we might not even be trained to do it. But as friends, as companions of people we care about and love, friends, neighbors, family members, we do play a critical role. And that critical role is to ask some of those questions, to ask gently if somebody's been thinking about something that might harm themselves. And if they have, where would we then help them by calling a number, by taking somebody to the someplace like the Ozark Center, where we can help people over that hill, rather than just leaving them on that hill by themselves. We need to intervene in such a way that we're capable of helping our brothers and sisters, to weather through a very difficult time, and to do that in a way. We've got wonderful places like Ozark Center here in the area who can help with those things. We need to talk about it and do what we can in terms of helping our brothers and sisters to keep living through what might otherwise be a crisis. I just want to thank you for joining us again, and thank you, Debbie, for joining us this morning for Faith in Our Hometown. Again, a rather difficult moment, but we make it through. God bless.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.